And welcome back. We are here for episode 2 of season 2 of the Bottomless podcast. That is spelled BTTMLESS. And so to get with introduction,
you only left out one of the vowels. Go back to season 1, episode 1, when Kevin said that. Vincent looks confused. How do you remember? It's so funny.
Wait, how did you spell it?
Well, I so BTTMLESS because of the O is out. So I would go. In the early days, I would go, and we only left out one of the vowels.
And me and you were all like, and then he was like, "Oh, there's 2 O's." Anyway,
well, I love the canon.
Young Kevin was bushy.
Oh, us 7 months ago,
bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So yeah, to get with introductions. We are 3 brown people. My name is Kevin. I live in Panhandle, Florida. And these 2 lovely people are...
the artist formerly known as Lil V.
and Leslie.
And Leslie lives in Hawaii. And Vince lives in LA. And like I said, we just 3 brown friends kicking it in our waning 20s. Although I will be ditching Leslie and Vince in the 20s here this year. So we're going to have to figure out a new way to describe our podcast. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just start saying you kids, like you kids today. When I turn 30, everything is gonna be like you kids and you kids this and you kids that.
We love a grumpy old man.
My wine.
On the note of being grumpy old men, I don't know if y'all saw that wild ass viral video of the couple getting into an argument with their neighbor and getting shot. Did you guys see the video beforehand?
I hadn't even heard about the incident before you.
Me either.
How long has it been?
So I was minding my damn business last weekend at Echo Park, trying to have a few drinks, just look at the sky, take it all in. And my friend came over to me and was like, "Oh, you got to watch this video." And I thought it was like a dance video or something.
Was it?
And
Kaylee?
it's actually, no, surprisingly. But it's just this video of these neighbors. It's this couple getting into an argument with their neighbor across the street about snow, like shoveling snow. And I guess it just got escalated. They were kind of taunting the guy, the couple was. And then it just kept getting heated. And then I think he threatened to pull out his gun. And then she was like, "I'm recording you," as if like bullets care about a camera. So my man's went inside, grabbed a shotgun. I think he might have grabbed another kind of gun, came out. They died. it was a bit brutal. And you thought it just never ended because he went inside, got a bigger gun, came back out. And then basically it turned into them dying and then him doing a murder-suicide. And it just kind of went viral because of the absurdity. This was all over shoveling snow.
Wow.
The fuck?
And to clarify, this was in Pennsylvania? Like
Scranton, I think. Yeah, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So it's just insane. It's just one of those things too that I don't know what it is with our sick obsession with dark videos, but this video blew up on Twitter. We're crazy. And I'm not gonna lie, I watched the whole thing and I was like, why am I watching this? But just goes to show, don't be arguing with strangers. Like, you never know how crazy people are.
Literally neighbors, right? Strangers.
That's true. Don't be arguing with nobody. People are crazy out here. But I guess I'm wondering, I know you guys haven't shot anyone, and if you have, we won't admit it on the podcast, but I'm curious, have you guys been in like a super heated argument, especially with a stranger? I mean, if not, other examples are fine, but I'm curious if you ever argued with like someone you didn't even know. I can start and say that I've never done that sober.
I mean, go ahead.
No, I mean, I'd never gotten into like any serious heated arguments, but I've gotten little like spats, at the food truck. There's something about food trucks and being drunk. One time before a club, the other time after a club. Okay, the time before the club was my fault.
What happened? Because it's rare for me to get angry, so this must be like an interesting story.
It's probably not as bad because I don't get angry. So these are more just, I think, messy drunk. But the one time before the club was more my fault. We were just picking arguments with each other. My friend Julian, who I like to, just talk shit to. But we were drunk and the bouncer heard me and I like made a joke, me thinking that I'm the fucking life of the party. I was like, yeah, don't let that guy in. He's nothing but trouble. And then the bouncer said, how about I don't let you in? And I was like, don't insert yourself into our play argument. And then he let him in and then like tried to cause a scene to make me wait a little bit longer. And I was salty and like petty argued a little bit, but that the type of petty shit. The other time at the food truck, I think I had license. We were standing behind these two like scrawny kids and this like drunk, big, trashy, like this big white dude came up and he like started calling them some slurs, some homophobic slurs. So me and my friend were Captain Save-A-Ho and we were drunk, so we were just froggy in general. And then again, someone wanted to insert themselves. So the guy ended up walking away because I'm scary. Clearly, I scared him away after I cursed him out.
With your
Exactly. He didn't want the smoke. But then I'm not going to pull the race card, but this like woman that was watching the fight said some slick remarks to me. And I looked at her and she's like, what are you going to fight me to? And I was so hurt because I felt like I had every license to curse the guy out for being homophobic. But alas.
There when things started, like before.
I don't think so. Or maybe she didn't notice when it started until it got escalated a little bit. But I was like, I thought I was doing a good thing.
Poor drunk Vincent.
Poor drunk me. That's the only time I ever get in arguments. I think one time I was in downtown walking home by myself and this guy jumped out of a trash to be like funny. And we like kind of spat. But it was mainly because I was scared. He scared me. So I just kind of like lashed out at him because
really scary.
At like 2 a.m. Like, don't play with me. Like, that's scary.
He's just chilling in the trash and like jumping out of strangers.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was like a drunk kid, like literal teenager, just like being wild in the streets. But yeah, that's the extent of my anger.
I really don't know that I've ever actually gotten in a fight with a stranger. Like in general, I've noticed I only really get mad at the people I'm like absolutely closest to. I think it has something to do with like somehow there's probably some healthy and really unhealthy stuff for why. Like on the healthy end, it's like, okay, well, I know that like, there's a space for this because like we know we love each other, da da da. So if I do, there's room for it to like actually be angry instead of divert it to something else. But on the unhealthy side, maybe there's like a strange association of like that with like the most intimate because of dynamics of my family growing up. I'm not sure. And then there's probably a third category of like it just isn't that big of a deal and that's just how it happens. But yeah, probably the person I've gotten most angry with ever is like the family member that I'm closest to. So
siblings.
Yeah.
Siblings are the worst.
It's so stupid. I remember one time, I think the worst time actually, RIP, never mind. The worst time was this past year during the pandemic. That brought out some like,
wow.
We got into probably the worst fight we ever had. But the silliest and second worst fight we ever had involved pillows. I don't know why. We had pillows and it was like we like punched each other, but like with the pillows as a block. I think we were like trying to still somewhat not actually hurt each other, but it really hurt. Like, and I honestly don't remember what we were fighting about.
Like you weren't pillow fighting. You were actually fighting.
We weren't pillow fighting. We were like actually fighting, but using the pillows as like, like I don't know. It's weird.
Love that for you.
I love that for you.
What about you, Kevin?
Well, so I go to 0 to 100 anyway. Like it could be the smallest. It could
no.
So I think strangers.
With strangers too, though.
Yeah. But I think with the stranger, it wasn't really a stranger, but I just met the dude that day because we all went to Bonefish Grill, and I'm not gonna say who this is, but their fiance at the time, now their husband. And I go to 0 to 100 typically only if it's around things that I like. So i.e. theology, hip hop, or if I'm really particular about something, usually theology and hip hop. And I don't think I was drunk or like I wasn't drunk or anything, but it was back when Kanye announced he was going to run for president back in like 2016 or some shit like that. And so that poor soul didn't know that I love Kanye. He was like, he's not fit to run for president. And then I started going off, and then I was like, who the fuck is fit? He was like, he smoked weed. And I was like, and I started listing all presidents who smoke weed. And I was like, you dense motherfucker. So that was, but like, I got riled up, but me getting riled up isn't like out of the norm if I actually begin to argue. So like, but with the stranger, that was like the one time where like, I felt bad because I was like, I don't know this person, their fiance with one of my friends, like, but he just stepped out of line. Like it's kind of awkward though, because at the time I loved my friend. It was like, damn, you snapping on people's significant
fiancés and shit.
Anyone
can get it.
Wedding?
You said what?
Did you get an invite to the wedding?
They nah, because they like, damn, I'm giving too much details. They got, I think they got married in a foreign country. So like no one got
told you that. Maybe it really all boils down to this incident. Meanwhile, they were in Rayford.
It probably would. It probably was like, but the person still tries to reach out to me today to like be friends and shit. So
how often do you guys have conversations in general? So like in your life, not just thinking of isolated incidents where you've gotten riled up with strangers, but like how often do you have conversations with people that you disagree with in general? Like let's give, I don't know, like maybe a monthly average in your life, and it might be different for 2020 because I know it was such a intense year.
Well, I think I'm just a glutton to be like slapped around, and like I just like to be beat up a little bit, choked a bit, because I tend to gravitate towards disagreements more than the average person. But I guess for me, disagreement like isn't like arguments. Like I don't really argue with people ever. Like I don't really get into heated arguments ever, unless I'm drunk. I can think of maybe one or two like heated-ish arguments in like the last decade. But I do get into conversations like of things that I disagree on. I feel like weekly, and not just talking about this podcast either, but weekly in general. I kind of like disagreements, so.
Oh, I know.
I think they're.
I know.
I think I'm very opinionated, but I like my opinions to be not just informed by like abstract theory or like my own experience, but I think there's a lot of utility in bouncing that off other people's ideas. So I tend to gravitate to that a lot. More than ever in my life. I think I got radicalized like 3 or 4 years ago, and I came to a place where I realized that no one around me I felt like viewed things the way I did, which was actually kind of fun in a way, because there was just a lot of different pressures and conversations that I were having. And I also realized that I became the muscle of explaining my thoughts and ideas, even the radicalized ones, only get better and more precise and more persuasive the more that I have conversations where there's some sort of usually implicit disagreement. So it doesn't bother me. It's also informed by like previous, like Kevin likes to bring up speech and debate. So that type of static I am used to. Also, more details from my work life, but I recruit. So negotiations also a big part of my job usually. So I also am used to having that kind of staticky conversation where two people are trying to push towards an end goal and trying to compromise. So I think just that energy is just something that's been a part of my day-to-day life for whatever reason.
I feel like for me, what it boils down to is that I like really, it seems like it's sort of opposing ideas, but I really like unity, but I don't like shallow unity, or we've kind of talked about it like an asinine version of unity. So actually, like, there's people in my life who really like, and I totally empathize and understand it, but really avoid confrontation because they value harmony. And it's not because they value shallow harmony. It's more just like for them, what looks like harmony is like, let's focus on putting energy into the things we already solidly know we agree on. And maybe rather than having an explicit conversation or, confronting the thing, we can more so just vibe it through, or there's a bunch of other valid ways to write, like sort of not just leave something unaddressed. But for me, like also just being very language oriented, as much as I like bark about, like words aren't the language of thought. It's weird, it's like often, at least for me, it's like easier to critique the things that I most love and am drawn to. So like I love words, and I like using them, I like absorbing them. And so for me, if I can feel something between me and someone who I love, or even might not even be like they're that important to me yet, but like just if there's any sort of pathway where it's like our lives are going to be intersecting and influencing each other, I just sort of have this internal, like this intuition of like the things that to me it's like, well, if we want to have like true, not even, maybe unity isn't the right word, but like it is kind of, it's like unity, but it's more just like really understanding each other. I would always prefer to like just bring it up and talk about it rather than not, even if it involves what a lot of people would consider things that like ruffle their feathers or make them uncomfortable. Usually it's like I lean into that, not because I like arguing, but
We
because to
know you
me
do.
it doesn't seem so obvious, but if you know me for any amount of time, yeah, like you'll see it. Like, because it, to me, kind of like to Vincent's point of like, I think maybe sometimes the other person, it could seem like, oh, are we arguing? But it's like, I don't feel that way because I know my intention is like understanding and like really seeing their perspective, even if I ultimately disagree with it, and having mine understood. And so to me, that's always just like, it's communication. And if we both have emotions about it, that's like normal, but it doesn't mean we're fighting. What about you, Kevin? You've had lots of face expressions over the last 5 minutes.
One to two times a year, I get into serious heated arguments unless I can avoid. I try to avoid it to like where it's like none a year. I try to just be agreeable with, like, I try to be agreeable. And because once I do get riled up into a like worked up conversation, it's usually with like Vince or JoJo, and it's like one of the safest spaces I can possibly get to. So like those aren't arguments, just because like me and Vince and JoJo can be like going. We could literally exchange like 400 text messages within the course of like 12 minutes in our group chat. Like all capital letters and the cussing emojis and like screaming at each other and like making fun of, like making like straw mans out of each other's arguments and like tearing it down, being like, you fucking doof. But because of the precedence of that relationship, like it doesn't feel like arguing, even though I can get worked up. So like in a normal world, the last time I got into an argument was like with I think a coworker of mine last year before.
Heated argument?
No, yeah, because they said some. They made fun of something they didn't know was a part of they talked down on something they didn't know was a part of hip hop culture, and so I just went off on them.
Props to you. I don't think I can hang with going off someone at work.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if that's props. I mean, actually, I don't know if I should be encouraging that, but the fact I don't have the gall to do that at work. Good or bad, TBD.
It was a bad idea, but no, I for the most, and it was like a trigger moment, and I was in a funky mental. Anyway, yeah. So no, in terms of like how many times a year I get into argument, like not like there's only
not get into an argument, but have conversations about topics that you disagree with the person about. At 29 years old, potato, there is no difference.
No. Because there's a difference. There's a difference. At 29, going on 30, because I've been so stressed out like by those kind of interactions. For the last 2 to 3 years, probably less than I can count on one hand. Probably times in a year, I've gotten to a discussion with someone about something I disagree about, just because it stresses me. Like literally 72, 96 hours after the fucking discussion, I will be riled up. Like I will be like waking up, trying to like have peace in my day. Like Vince, like, oh, love that for you. Love that peace. No, there's no peace. There's no loving, no nothing. Cause like I will be riled up for 96 hours, like walking around like, and then this shit out. Like you want to text like the rebuttal, the counter to the argument to the person. Well, what I didn't say was, so at this point in my life, probably like 2 to 3 times a year, unless I can make it to 0. But like early 20s, Kevin was probably like, fuck it. Like, and when I was in Bible college arguing theology, when I was just young, running around Fayetteville arguing hip hop with people, it was probably like 2 to 3 times a week, if not 5 to 6 times a week.
Which is funny because I never really saw you spaz on anyone like that. Even in we were in like internship together. I mean, like I've seen you get upset, but I missed all the major spaz moments. I miss everything fun. Everything fun. I miss it.
Yeah, actually, back when we were all friends, when we were kiddies, like, and by that I mean like in high school. Yeah, like I remember, if anything, this is a separate road that we don't have time to go down, but I remember you would be like quiet, but I don't remember ever seeing you, and you could tell it was like a not good quiet. Like
yeah, that I remember as well.
I don't remember seeing you like, yeah, getting into
Cause then if I'm not quiet, I spaz, and I know after I spaz, I'm gonna feel ashamed and then concerned about like, oh no, the person usually not the person I spazzed on, but then the people around. I always have concern for the people who are witnessing me spazzing out, not having context or empathy for my spazzing. And because my mom made fun of me as a child when I would like get emotional and worked up and argue about something. I think I told Vince this. One time I was so upset and I was like crying, like I was angry. I was so angry and I was crying. And then something happened. And like at the end of my cry with tears still in my eyes, I laughed, like a genuine laugh about something because it was funny. And it pissed me off so bad. She said, you should be an actor because you know how to like flip between emotions really quickly. And it infuriated me so bad. But all that to say,
as for valid reasons.
For valid reasons. So all that to say, like that condition, my mother, God bless her heart, and I love her to death, most important human being on this planet to me still to this day, conditioned me to always worry about how people perceive my emotional outbursts when she would say shit like that. So I try my best to like contain and be like, oh, I'm around people who don't know me. So if I spaz, then like I'm gonna feel ashamed and like they like look down on me or think badly of me or think poorly of me. So I would always try to like conserve my energy if I'm around what I don't consider a safe environment.
Real quick bit of a digression, but I don't know if this is a guy thing, and I mean like the way that we're socialized to like hate our emotions, but I've also noticed the few times that I also spazzed, and the thing is I'm so dissociated from my emotions compared to Kevin, who is a real human being, that when I spaz, it's probably not even a real spaz. It's probably like a mini spaz, but there's always a feeling of shame afterwards. Like the last time I spazzed was in college, and we bring it up as a joke, and it actually is a funny story in retrospect.
It is a funny story. You told me at one point.
All it was me literally raising my voice a little bit and like slightly calling people out and saying like, what's the problem? And I felt so much shame and embarrassment. Like I don't know, like there's so much shame when I don't know, first of all, should we feel ashamed for spazzing? Like human emotions normal. Does everyone feel ashamed when they spaz?
Leslie, have you ever gotten to like a place where it was an unusual heightened state of emotion and it was coming out like verbally and then even in intensity of volume, and then like post that experience, no matter who it was with, post that experience, you felt any level of like shame about that? Like have you ever had that sensation?
That's a really interesting question. Honestly, I don't think shame is one of the things I would strongly use to describe how I feel after that. Usually after I have a really intense anger or any sort of negative emotion outburst, which I definitely do. It's not exactly shame. It's more like I do tend to be sort of really quick to want to like self-reflect and apologize for my part in whatever it is, and like if they apologize, forgive. So it's like more like a quick tendency toward like, oh, I really want to reconcile, but I don't think shame is really up there. And I think Vincent might be kind of at least partially right in terms of just socialization. Like yeah, I do think women are socialized to have a lot more room for being emotional. Well, in some strange ways, both yes and no. But no, in the ways you guys are talking about, yeah, for sure. And it makes me really sad. Like this has come up with almost every single one of my guy friends. Not the issue of shame after anger, but just really like, yep, it's right there. Like all of my guy friends at some point, it's come up this idea of like an emotionally stunted development due to societal pressures, and even directly just in the family units.
If only our parents would have smoked weed in the 70s.
You do have a
If only
point.
they would have. There's that meme about like if our parents had gone to therapy, and it's like the utopia. It's true. Y'all, it's our responsibility for the next generation to
Facts.
go to therapy. Although
Well,
maybe a lot of us going to therapy won't have kids. I don't know. Because we're more reflecting about, I don't know, inwardly and also the state of the world. I don't know. That might be off.
do you guys think like I think what Kevin and I are talking about was unhealthy shame. But that being said, do you think there is a line, not arguments, but just like conversations that are disagreeable? I mean, I think in Kevin's case, he mentioned he doesn't want to engage with those generally. It's just not his preference. So maybe more so for Leslie, I'm curious, what's your line for when you won't engage in a conversation that has some sense of disagreement in it? Or when do you abort mission?
Can you go first?
No.
No, I've already talked so much this episode.
Wow.
Kevin can go too, and then I'll go.
I'm doing a social experiment where I talk like 80% less. So I'm gonna let y'all like carry.
And to be fair,
Carry
we
me
always
like
talk about how
me.
I talk the least, but I feel like I talked a good bit last episode. I feel
You
like
did because
Compared to me and Leslie?
before I feel like I did.
Hell no, compared to me and
No,
Leslie. I
Vincent.
talk like 10%, maybe 60. Leslie talked like 30, and then you talk like 10.
Oh, so I'll
That's
answer the
true.
question, but on the note of my approach to conversations in general, but especially when there's disagreement, honestly, that is my communication style. It's an intentional thing that I've cultivated where if I'm talking about something deeply, I will try to speak the least that I can while being most effective with getting my point across while giving room for the other person to speak. Just because for me, like the point of these conversations, Leslie kind of mentioned it too, and I think I feel similarly, is that it's to understand and be understood. Like that typically is a very conscious North Star in these conversations. So it makes sense why I talk the least, but I will try and talk more. But it really is like my communication style. And it has been for multiple reasons. But when I draw the line, I think, especially when you start to get more comfortable swimming in those kinds of waters, I think you get a better understanding of, or I feel like I have a decent gauge of like the purpose of the conversation. So for me, if I'm talking with someone that like viscerally disagrees, but they are genuine and wanting to share their opinion as well as hear mine, I want all the smoke. Like I'm down for that, and I actually literally enjoy that. It like gives me life. But if I perceive that the other person is married to being right, or like feeling like their understanding of disagreement is just not even debate, like they'll think it's debate, but it's argument, and that's like the only understanding of how to have these discussions, those now I will maybe still, I don't know, I will still engage to an extent to see if I can like persuade them to have a different understanding of the conversation. But if there's no hope in that, and then I'll abort mission. The only theoretical exception is if I'm engaging with a conversation that's more spectacle than me understanding that specific person, and it's something that I know people are listening to. Maybe it's like we're around people that I want to hear, or if it's like I don't do this as much anymore, but in theory I would engage with like some sort of online discussion if I think the spectacle of it has utility. But otherwise, if the other person isn't actually interested in listening at all, then to me that's the line of where disagreement just is, it's useless to engage. I get nothing from that.
What was the question?
What's the line?
that you draw
Of having hard
of like
conversations?
what? Yeah, which I think is why Vincent was kind of saying like, okay, well maybe you already kind of answered the question, but like the idea of like if you
Or for
do,
you, maybe like what are the signals that this is a type of disagreement that is not worth engaging in for you?
yeah, like you couldn't learn from it, you couldn't at all. You know what I mean? Because there are the nice things that come out of talking with someone you disagree with, which obviously like you've felt like we, on this podcast, like we definitely sometimes talk about things, but I'm glad to know it doesn't count in your category of, I guess, like 5 times a year. Because if it was 5 times a year, including this podcast, like it would have all been me.
Oh,
Are they all me on this podcast? But no, I'm glad that those aren't that category for you.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So the question is, which ones are worth it, or what order the signals to stray away?
That it's not worth it. Signals
That it's not worth
it.
If anyone, damn, how do I put this into like a thesis statement? Anyone who damn.
Ooh, he is pulling up the faces of everyone that has ever fit this category.
Yeah, because there's someone specific right now who like I just talked to today, and I'm being asked to talk to them about racial stuff. But like if I hadn't been asked, I'm gonna give a cop out conversation to that person. But if I hadn't been asked, I wouldn't do it, and it's because I'm trying to think of like why. Yeah, I don't have like a quick computed answer of why I stray away. Like there is a reasoning that happens. It's gut.
More intuitive,
it's intuitive. It's gut. It's intuition. Like the biblical answer is don't throw your pearl before swine. The like
classic.
Like there's like it translates, like there's a picture of a squirrel I have as a meme, and it's a squirrel putting his hand on a glass, but it's like standing straight up on his hind legs, and it has his hand on the glass, and it looks like it's giving you the hand, but the squirrel says the meme says, I'm sure whatever you have to say can wait until you're smarter.
Oh.
And that's the gut. That's, if I could put into words what the gut intuition was, that's the gut. I look at somebody and I go, if I have the feeling the party I'm talking to, like if I have any kind of feeling that I'm not going to get anything from this, then it's like I'm not having. So for example, it's like I don't care to educate you, I don't care to inform you, I don't care to baby you, I don't care to like enlighten you or make you woke on shit. It's like if I don't get the feeling that we can't mutually benefit, that I'm sitting here having to like pour down to you and like spoon or give you some shit or like correct you on something. It's like, dog, it can, number one, how long is this going to take me? Is this a quick, like, has this person exhibited any behavior that lets me know I could go, hey, that's not cool, and this is why? And they're like, damn, you're right, I never saw it like that. Because some people I can do that with. I've had friends who I go, hey, yo, like what you just did, no, we can't do that here in front of that person because I'm friends with that person. You can't say that shit because this is why. And they go, you're right, my bad, I didn't think about it like that. There are other people that go, yo, what are you doing? You can't say that shit in front of so-and-so. And the person, and then it turns into like an hour dialogue. And I go, you're not worth an hour of my time. I don't care that we're friends or not. You're not worth an hour because you're dumb and you're wasting my energy and my time and you're like dragging me out. So it's intuition. It's like case by case, right? But if there's some sense of like lack of worth or lack of like efficiency or lack of worth in it, in the attempt to do it, it's kind of like I go, nah, I'm not doing this. Like I think I have to value the person, I have to value the relationship, I have to really value the dialogue, and I have to assume or feel on the part of the person that, like, kind of like what Vince was saying, there isn't a desire to like argue for the sake of arguing, to be provocative. There's actually a desire to like dialogue. Like there's going to be a two-way street. You're not just like letting me speak so you could like counter my arguments like we're fucking playing Street Fighter. You're like actually listening to like analyze, contrast your opinions and go, yeah, but okay, Kevin, you said this and I hear you. Now from my world of my POV, I say this, what do you do? And then it genuinely presents something where I go, fuck, I've always had this stance on this. I'm trying to inform you and educate you. And now you just said something that literally benefited me because I never thought about life. Like your worldview is informing my worldview. And it might either shift how I think about this, or it might just better inform how I try to educate in the future. So if I don't feel like that can be attempted, like a two-way street can be attempted on the other end of the party, then I go, I'm going to offer a two-way street. But if you're not going to offer a two-way street, if I feel like it's going in one ear and out the other, and your shit is like fucking Teletubbies inside and Blue's Clues and you're just a fucking child, then I'm not going to do it. So
put some respect on Blue's Clues. Whoa.
So true.
Blue stayed in that fucking house. Dora got out in them streets. Dora got out and adventured. Blue always stayed for her.
And she kept getting mugged left and right. You would have thought she learned better. Swiper's ass was swiping that ass.
She was in them streets.
That's really interesting. I think that I would also say my line is more intuitive, but definitely informed by different things than what you were saying, Kevin. And honestly, I've never properly met, it's hard to really put words. I do think it's rare to hit my line, honestly. The only thing that would really quickly is if we don't really have that much relationship, I think maybe this is not always true, but it's probably more true than not true, is the less relationship I have with somebody, the less room I have for what's not immediately obviously going to be a genuine conversation. If I have 10% relationship with you, you need to have a pretty decent whatever it is that seems to involve, if it's going to involve, disagreement or possibly conflict, it has to seem worth it, just the subject matter itself, and then maybe I'll go there. Whereas once you reach a certain level of closeness with me, you could have what might seem like a 1% worth it, but I'll probably just give it all the time and space that I have at my given level of mental health, which probably is one of the primary factors of the actual non-intuitive side. It's that does seem to be and this happened last year where I just kept engaging. You guys know about the situation. And it was just I don't even know that one was all my mental health. It was just so obviously not that I needed them to change to my perspective, but it was just I don't even know how to put words on it, that situation. I don't know how to describe that. Honestly, when I think of it, it just makes me so sad and upset. I guess just where it's I can't feel a genuine goodwill, empathy, or I don't know, just so yeah, probably when it hits the point of it's seriously affecting my mental health or the other person's, if you can kind of sense that, I'll start to adjust accordingly. But
it reminds me
some healthier, huh?
I was gonna say, it just reminds me of
you're crossing my healthy boundaries.
I try to talk once, try to talk more once episode.
Look at Vince gaslighting. I told you Vince be gaslighting.
Oh,
Vince be like, go ahead and then start talking over. No, go ahead and start talking. And go ahead and start talking.
That's me.
It reminds me of the sense of naive impulses that I have. Not saying that you had those same impulses, Leslie, but it reminds me of the time that I
probably have
called this girl racist on Facebook.
I've never done that, just to be clear. But tell us the story. Tell us the story.
Well, just being honest, not my proudest moment. But probably a very pivotal moment for me and understanding how I engage in these conversations, and knowing when I'm too emotional. But I think I was triggered by some naiveness that I held in me, and basically it was during the Trump election, and someone from our hometown who I didn't really know that well, so it wasn't a close friend, just someone from living in Fayetteville as long, you just kind of interact with a lot of people. And I don't remember exactly what she posted, but she posted something that was just wrong, just plainly wrong. And I remember being naive, and I think in my mind, issues, and for this it was about race, a lot of these issues, and I think it's still the case, it's rooted in ignorance and just not having the proper context or understanding of history. But I think where I was naive is that I think I assume that if I share a resource, the blinders will be open, and she's I was just wrong, sorry. I mean, to be fair, that's the ideal thing to do.
Did you share the resource you're racist, read this, or what was the
I was very
because I know you wouldn't put it like that.
He
basically said it like that.
The way that I talk on this podcast, very I wasn't overly lovey-dovey. I'm not one to sprinkle a bunch of platitudes.
But you were typing to her, right?
Yeah, it was over Facebook.
Sending voice messages. He was
hey, but it wasn't
www.
But it wasn't I was calling her names. It was this specific piece of your post just isn't correct. Check this link out. What are your thoughts? And then she literally said, I'm not reading that. And I think that triggered me because it was about race. It was 2016. So A, it felt personal. B, like heightened tensions. And C, I was giving you a resource, like read the shit. And then I was like, basically said, well, if you just take pride in your ignorance, like that's your call. And then she messaged me. Why people love to play
that was
victim.
in comments?
This was all in comments. Why people love to play victim as if ignorance or race is a slur. She messaged me and said, calling me ignorant, really? That's low. And then I said, I screenshotted it for this. This is so cringe. But this is a pivotal story in the arc of Vincent, the communicator. She said, calling me ignorant, though, really low. I don't have time to sit here and fuss on Facebook. This is so cringy. And I was like, please. No, I'm cringy. It said, please. I said, please see my last comment. Like I said, I was genuinely trying to discuss, but you don't care, as you said. So feel free to unadd. And then I said, as a person of color, trying to make you see where I'm coming from when you don't care, you are perpetuating systemic racism. I hope you're better than that. You are the problem. And I assume you know this because you were embarrassed and switched to messages. But if you're going to take pride in your ignorance, our conversation is over. Again, feel free to unadd. Very out of character for me,
That's
but I
very out of character, and I'm not faulting you or anything, but that is like so out of character.
Wait. I'm not letting either of you get away with saying that Vince
pull a receipt.
With saying that Vince was out of character.
Pull a receipt
from 2000. When did Black Lives Matter start? 2012, 8.
I think
it was Trayvon. So I think 2008.
Yeah.
From 2000, and that was 2016 when you did that.
Oh, 2012. This was 2016.
That's why. Wait, when you sent that message saying you are perpetuating systemic racism, that was 2016. Meaning, and this is like exaggeration because between 2008 and 2016, I have no idea what Vince's Facebook activity was. But in 2008, I think I went to visit. Maybe it was 2012. I went to visit Vince in LA, and every night when we would come back, and this is an exaggeration as well, it's probably one night. Every night we would come back to the Airbnb from
2016, probably. I didn't move to until 2016.
Nah, because 2016 is when I joined the military, and it was like a tour. But when me and Matt came, and I had the Airbnb out like way out from where everything was.
It was either 16 or 17, but either way, you were in LA.
That's crazy. Anyway, so Vince would get on his Facebook every night, probably one night out of 7 days, and just go and before I got to
LA. Oh, this was the same time. This was around the same time.
So yeah. So like that wasn't out of character for Vince. Vince had a string of days back to back.
Okay, let me be very clear. The string in 2016, this period was out of character. Yeah. This is not typically how I engage.
Okay, you're right.
No. Okay, when do I engage like that now?
I was gonna say, I feel like, when people say like, "Oh, I'm sorry for what I said when I was drunk. I didn't mean it," and then other people, the other side of the argument is like, "No. If you said some shit while you were drunk, I believe that's how you actually felt." So
yeah, there's a saying.
There's a rap.
There's a rap.
I have a thought on this, but yes.
There's a rapper who says, "Don't judge them when they're comfortable. It's about what they adapt to." Like you make a diamond out of pressure, right? So I think your substance truly comes from like, I don't give a, anybody can like exhibit
when they're static.
Anybody can exhibit well-adjusted behavior when the circumstances aren't strenuous or exhausting or uncomfortable. Everyone can be, we're all at work, there's order, there's peace, there's calm. We can all act like well-adjusted human beings. Fuck that. Break down the walls, let chaos come barreling in, let people have to like fucking deal with like what's going on in Texas right now. We saw it. Ted Cruz fucking flew out. Like, we see the true character of people.
He's such a rat.
We see what happens when shit goes wrong. We see who people are when shit goes wrong, right? So I just think because I meant this about myself too. Like,
well, to be clear, you would have, I would see what you're saying if 2020 never happened. I went through a much more period of static where I think the ways in which I moved was very different in 2020 than it was in 2016.
All that to say, I don't think that moment defines who you are, but I do think it's a facet of the mosaic of who you are. And so in the same way, Fam, when I went through my shit with JoJo and I snapped on JoJo, I don't look at it like I used to say shit like, "Oh, I was in a dark place." No, motherfucker, that's how you act when Kevin Ortiz gets pressured and gets okay. Yeah, your mental health was bad, but that's what happens when your mental health gets bad. Are we gonna act like your mental health is never gonna get bad again? No, it's gonna get bad again. So that's how you're gonna act when it gets bad. That's so. What I want to say is, it's a that now.
But even with that example, you've grown since then, since that moment. I think that's where growth comes in. I think in these moments, if you don't grow from it, that's one thing. But if you sit there and like introspect and grow from it, which I feel like I know I did from that, and I feel like you did too. Like even in static, I feel like you're different than that point.
Yeah, but I just want to say, so even if you did grow out of it and it's something you became well adjusted to where you don't exhibit that behavior anymore, and you know better to do better the next time, in that time capsule of that moment of who you are in 2016, that was who, like, it's a part of who you were. It's not who you were, it doesn't define, but it's a part of who you genuinely were in that moment. It's not like, oh, like something overtook me, I don't know what. Nah, motherfucker, you were drunk, you were lit, shit was crazy, it was social upheaval, you got lit, like you went off on Facebook. I've done the same shit this past year. I went off on Facebook, my whole church, I was snapping.
It's out of character for the man you see on the screen right now. I ain't that man
I
no
agree.
more.
I think you guys are honestly not in disagreement. I'm just gonna say, like, you're both saying it's like, yeah, Kevin, you're right, and Vincent, you're right, and I don't have the energy to connect the dots of why. Figure it out.
Leslie better just fast food quick.
Not just giving us a TLDR.
Just 60 minutes. You know, I'll
fine. Well, the other question too is like when you're in this place of static. And I think also I have the receipts for the ways that I can engage people with different opinions, because I think there is a conversation of like allyship. Like in that example, homegirls, I probably worked against making her an ally. I don't know her today. She could have changed, but on November 12th, when I said this, I'm sure I pushed her farther away from any sense of openness to educating herself. And to be clear, I'm not saying it was necessarily my place to educate, but I think I would have to own the role that I played in pushing her farther from that reality. But I don't know. How do you guys think this applies to like allies and allyship? Or even like when Kevin was talking earlier, I was thinking of like sometimes you need allies that maybe don't have like intellectual integrity. Like how do you approach those kinds of things? Because it's kind of tricky.
I feel like my thoughts on it are so, whereas like if you want to use a word like allyship, it connotes more like stones, like solid things. And I feel so watery around this topic. And it's so many topics. I'm just more like a watery person, you know, like to me, it's like, okay, ally is a helpful term and I understand, but like, to me, it's like an ally. It's like, it's a relationship. It's kind of like annoyingly simplistic, I guess, but it's like,
you don't think you can be an ally without like established relationship?
Yes, I do.
How do you define ally?
I guess if I try to define it, which I've never actually tried to just like put words on it on my own, I would say an ally is somebody who has an understanding of people who have struggles, usually from systemic forces that are different than their own struggles, and a vested interest in using their resources to help eliminate the struggles that whatever group of people they want to be an ally to face. Like a vested interest, like a commitment, like not just like, oh, I see that that's there. It's like you have to both understand it, which would mean, that's why I think it does come back to relationship. Like, of course you can be an ally to groups of people that maybe you don't have access to build those relationships, but if you can't build relationships, you have to put in, I think, the time first to really, as best you can, then read material or whatever way you can actually get directly from people speaking about that who are actually in the affected population. I would think that that's an essential tenet of being an ally, as opposed to, you know, you read about an issue as written by some academic in in America writing about something in Guatemala, I don't know, for example. I don't think, even if then you ended up caring about something that was affecting some specific group of people in Guatemala, that maybe you played a part in as an American who consumes X type of product, I don't think you could call it allyship unless you did your best to absorb what like people who are actually being affected are saying, and then like make your decision and commitments to, again, using your resources to basically change the system that is perpetuating that issue. How do you guys define ally?
My brain's actualizing. Give me
Okay.
some more time.
So my definition of allyship is any two parties or persons who are willing to work towards a shared goal or vision.
Mm.
So like Lecrae, I think it was Lecrae. No, it was propaganda. It was a spoken word artist saying propaganda. He was talking when the whole social upheaval was going on last year. He was talking about how I'm not going to remember the two demographics, so I'm going to make up two demographics because when he said the two demographics, they were to me, when I thought about what he was saying, they were as polar as the two I'm going to give an example of. So I'm going to misquote propaganda, but I'm stating that I'm misquoting propaganda. He said the Ku Klux Klan and Black Lives Matter saw there was a common political thing that they needed to get accomplished in their county, and they didn't have numbers alone to get that bill pushed. So they came together and said, hey, like, it might have been like Amish and like Muslim or Christian and like gay, LGBT, but it was something that like both parties were like, we fucking want this like issue dealt with in legislation. And they came together and said, hey, alone our numbers aren't enough, but we can actually sway this vote if we come together and say like, and go to our elected officials. So it was like, yeah, like religiously, we totally, or socially, or a lot of issues, we vastly disagree. And there's on the lower levels of like grassroots of our people, there's probably a lot of tensions and issues going on. But like there's this goal that there's this one dot that we both want to hit that if we put our numbers together, we can hit. So let's just come together for this one moment to hit it. Let's like have this show of harmony and unity of a stance on this issue so we can get it passed. So allyship, I just look at it like, yeah, any two parties that are willing to work towards a shared vision, goal, or mission together. Indiscriminate of time, indiscriminate of like, yeah.
Love that. No, I think I agree with you both in my definition. Basically, I would probably say what Kevin said, and like it's uniting behind a mission or goal. So I guess in a way too, it sounds weird, and I think I have like adjacent conversations in my mind that's shading this because it sounds weird to me to like think that you need a relationship for allyship, but I think Leslie is right. Because how can you understand a community if you don't have a relationship with them? Again, these are, I think, more adjacent than the direct conversation. Like I wonder the limits of organizing around relationships when a lot of people take relationships as like friendships, and like their idea of ally or like solidarity is like everyone, people are my friends and we're uniting, as opposed to
I don't
kind of
really think
speaking
of
to what
relationships in terms of friendships. But
and
yeah,
the way you described it,
yeah.
it didn't sound that way. But I think there's limits to that, and kind of to the point of what Kevin said. And there's just so many adjacent. This kind of topic I actually think about a lot, so I have like a lot of wandering thoughts. To Kevin's point, the specifics of like KKK and like the Black Panthers, maybe not, but like that general idea of like, no, if you really want to move for some sort of social change, you're gonna have to ally with people that are problematic, because all of us are problematic to some extent in some domain.
I honestly hate the word problematic.
Low-key, I hate it because I feel like it's also not very descriptive because it's kind of a vague word.
And yeah, but sorry,
what's your beef with it?
Well, I just feel like it's so often, instead of being any sort of useful, and if something's going to be useful, you would hope it's useful means that it's pushing you towards something better and good, and like both in concrete and immaterial senses. Usually when it's used, it's not useful. It's just like
dismissive.
Yeah, and also we're all hypocritical. Back to one of my favorite talking points. Like, I'm just like, God, can't we just all be hypocritical together and understand that we're all gonna fuck up, and like, but we all, as long as we're all in the same chapter and generally moving toward, like, can't there be room for like all these things without, oh, you're problematic, like even couching it that way in your mind. Like, I don't want to move and be like, well, I guess I'm going to unite with this problematic, even though, to be fair, like, I am hypocritical. I have thought that way, even as I have problems with it, I have problems with myself. But yeah, it's just like I just feel like it's a very more prideful rather than humble stance because it assumes like again, it's like I always want to be in a stance of like I don't want to predetermine what I can learn from anybody. So if I'm already labeling someone as problematic, even if I'm like 50% into knowing them, to me that's cutting off. It's just letting pride take the wheel, and I don't like it. But
I
also
think it's also, and I don't want to take us to, again, I have like a lot
Yeah,
of thoughts on adjacent topics, so maybe I'll just cut it with this.
convo. I've been like avoiding adjacent. I've been like, ooh, that. I've just been like looking at the browsers as they pop up.
Audience, leave a comment if you're down for a 5-hour episode. Ooh, yeah, there's so many thoughts. No, I agree with Kevin or like with propaganda in principle about like the ways that sometimes you're gonna have to unite behind a shared goal with people that just have beliefs that are hostile to you. And I think history also is congruent with that, and the ways that a lot of times, like I've been really into like the early, like around the 1900s, there's like the populist movement, and it was a coalition of farmers, black working class, as well as with honestly probably racist white people, and the amount of progress that was made from that movement. And I just think that's just a reality that we have to grapple with. Like these things aren't going to happen if we just want to only ally with people that think the exact same thing as us. And I'll cut it because I think there's another conversation about there is a limit to that.
Yes,
I like in the case, like I won't partner with the KKK, and I think there's very logically sound principles for that. But I think it just has to be from a place of not feeling morally righteous. Like I'm disinterested in any sort of project for social change if the project is predicated on us feeling morally right and morally perfect. I rather be in a project where we're all morally quote unquote problematic, but we're actually working towards a goal.
That's what I was saying. Let's all be hypocrites together.
You
Way to
won't.
just steal my idea and
Ugh,
mansplain it. No, I'm
I
kidding.
appropriated it.
I'm totally kidding.
Wow. We love appropriation. Were you going to say something, Kevin?
Nice.
Yeah, but it's going to add too much and it's going to trigger you.
Well, I'm curious. I fucked it up. I'm trying so hard not to like spin out into different directions. But what were you gonna say? I already did it. So
in my theoretical world, like you wouldn't work with the KKK because like circumstances aren't strenuous enough, right? Like if you think about back in the day when like I just watched the Fred Hampton Judas and the Black Messiah. I watched most of it. I watched like 80% of it. Anyway, like think about it for a second.
Did you watch it too, Vincent? I haven't seen
no,
it.
but I just literally went on like this like Fred Hampton little rabbit hole.
Fred Hampton was rallying like
what an angel.
He walked like in the movie. It's a dramatization. I'm not sure if he actually did this or to what extent this is true. He walked into a meeting of a bunch of white people who had Confederate flags all over the walls, and then rallied.
I did see a clip. I saw a clip from that.
He rallied those white people and a bunch of Puerto Ricans and a bunch of like Black Panthers, because the common thread was we're all poor. Mm-hmm. You're racist. Fred Hampton wasn't spewing the most white-friendly rhetoric. But you're poor, I'm poor, they're poor. We're all getting killed by cops. Talk to the Puerto Ricans, they're killing y'all too. Talk to the whites, they're killing y'all too. Nobody cared, they're killing us too. Oh shit, nobody. So it's just like in my perfect world where I talk about because you're comfortable enough and you have enough resources and you have enough draw within your own community that you don't need to rally with KKK if you're a Black Lives Matter or a Black Panther. But like the joke always is, what would bring all the nations together if aliens came? What would make Russia, China, US like rally? Fam, if we had a common enemy, if we had a big enough, strong enough, powerful enough common enemy that we had to rally against, and we calculated and went, this shit is not going to survive if we don't do this, then you would do it. It's just we get pride is usually what pushes us, and like I don't know, pride. I feel like pride is what pushes, and there's legitimate reasons. It's not just pride. There can be legitimate issues as to why you wouldn't want to work with the KKK. But I think pride does play a part in limiting us of going, man, I never thought about this. KKK, some of them actually poor. Some of us poor. We actually have similar interests in terms of what we want to get accomplished with like legislation or government. Huh. What if we actually try to build a bridge to get shit accomplished? So it's just interesting to me that like, you know, we have all these stances. I'm not gonna, and it's like, damn, all right.
You talk about okay.
Farther together, faster.
Lean into
alone.
it.
Faster alone, farther together.
We should just lean into it because This is like I'm like busting at the seams.
Vincent is foaming at the mouth. Yes, we can.
Y'all hit a
Let's
good
give ourselves
one.
another 15.
Have you
minutes.
actually not done a racist episode or episode on racism? No, I totally agree, Kevin. I guess here's my framing of this, but I think in principle it's the same because I do think it's pride. Um, the reason why, well, to answer your question, the reason why I say no to KKK, I do think the line is people that are a part of a project of domestic terrorism, of actually violence against certain communities. I think part of a project for that is different than like someone that has a Confederate flag. I think as someone from the South, I am in no way sympathetic to this like fetishization of the Confederacy, but I do understand the difference between someone with a Confederate sticker on their truck in theory than someone that's part of the KKK. So I do think there are differences. I would probably ruffle some woke people up with that. But I think ultimately what it comes down to is someone's understanding of like bigotry and racism and having a centralized understanding where racism is something that like you're born with, and like if I hooked you up I would like find a racist gene, as opposed to understanding that it's an appendage, it's something you're socialized or conditioned to believe. And that appendage is specific in that you can be unconditioned, or even if you can't, because you know it's not essential, they're not just like an inherently like an evil spirit, they're just a person with a very possibly harmful belief. If they are also maybe like working class poor, then yeah, you can have them in a coalition without compromising your morals, if that means they vote for some sort of systemic change that you're looking for, or if they're willing to show up to a protest. And again, I think history tells us that there is no like the abolition movement, the civil rights movement, these weren't movements of like moral purity. And really what I think you said as like pride, these were coalitions of like various struggles that had conflict because of that. But it's very historically ignorant to think that you're going to have a group of woke fucking like, everyone's going to speak the same woke language as you, and that's how you're going to get change. That just isn't how things work. But again, the limit I do think is at the point that someone's a part of an active project of hostility. I think that's a different dynamic. So you would like, there is no KKK partnering with like the Black Panther Party. Recently there was drama with a major leftish figure platforming a Boogaloo Boy, and he kind of played stupid. Like what he was saying, like he was agreeing with my like I want healthcare. He was agreeing with that, and it's like, well, he's actually part of a political project that's actually hostile to these different communities that you say to support. So I think that's the line, and I think it's kind of fuzzy. But this is something that's so top of mind for me because I'm not trying to at anyone like y'all or the people that are listening, but to be honest, this idea of like any sort of social political project is me being with people that morally are the same as me is more common than not. And it really bothers me because it's not just, to be honest, it's not more common than not, it's almost everyone. And that's something that I've been really trying to chew over and learning how to talk about, because I do think that if you're invested in actual change more than invested in feeling pridefully right and stroking your ego, that is an easy way to kill any sort of movement for change. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Wow, mic drop. That was beautiful.
Oh,
what Vince is trying to say, and what I agree with, is you motherfuckers is delusional. But I will say, what I will say to just add on, because this is a peripheral point that I was trying to make that I forgot while I was talking on my last time. What I've noticed, and I'm going to make a generalized statement about men. What I've noticed about men, especially from my time in the military, you throw a bunch of men in a room and tell them to like build relationship, they're not going to fucking build relationship. But if you put a bunch of people or a bunch of men in a room and like you make it like activity, and we do this like icebreaker activities. When we got to internship, we play games and all this shit, team up and pair up, and a shared goal, shared vision of winning. Put a bunch of men in a room and go, hey, like I'm going to indiscriminately split down the middle, 50 people, 25, 25. Here's the goal. Here's the rules to get to the goal. Go. And then maybe like you do some kind of incentive. The winner, like in basic training, the winner gets to like sleep in an extra hour tomorrow. And it's like, oh shit. Now, if you say that same group of 50 men at the start and you go, hey, build a relationship, come back an hour later, guess what? maybe a couple of people, but for the most part, there's gonna be a lot of people who just like outliers and introverts and people who don't want to, and just a general sense of I don't want to do this, coldness, fuck that shit. Do that all other exercise, common goal, regardless of, don't even focus, don't make the relationship like a non-factor. Work towards a shared common goal. By the end of it, and make it something that's very hard and difficult and takes like legitimate trust, teamwork. Like you build into it this strenuous, like come back an hour later, you're gonna have some people in that group who are just like bonded in a way that wouldn't have happened if you would have made the objective relationship. So touch on your point of like people wanting to have this like moral equality with the people they work with, and this idealized version of like, man, if I'm gonna work towards social change with people, then I want the company I'm donating to or the people I'm working with to, man, like, fam, do you want to like Kim Kardashian getting people out of jail with Donald Trump? Motherfucker, can we get so-and-so out of jail? I know people are like, oh, you're working with a bigot. Somebody was going to die in jail. Like, fuck your high horse and fuck your ego. Someone got out of jail. Father came home to their parents, to their loved ones, to their like. So I just think there's this idea of like, yeah, okay, you can stick to your morals. And then there's actually people in these actual streets getting actual shit done. So you can keep yapping about how so-and-so ain't got morals, or you just got one person on your team because they ain't nobody else real and ain't nobody else got morals and shit. And you can keep talking this delusional shit, assuming that everyone's going to have the same morals as you, when in actuality, the people you actually partner with who you think have the same morals, if you dug deep enough into the darkness of their life, probably have fuck shit in their life. You can just stay stagnant in where you are, not really getting shit done. Or you can try to analyze. I mean, if it's important to you, yes. If you look at it and you go, I just can't do it, fine and fair. But if you look at it and go, this is like Leslie was saying, to say I love someone is you're the person I want to kill my ego with. If you can look at it and go, is the mission more important than my pride or my ego or my issues with this person? Is this accomplishment, is what's more important? My name in this story of Kevin Ortiz accomplished getting someone out of jail, or so-and-so got out of jail. Fuck who got him out of jail. So-and-so came home from jail. If the mission is more important, if the task is more important, then can we prioritize that over my feelings in the direct moment about it and deal with that later? And if we can, then I think there should be effort put forth in trying to do that.
And I think, yes, all that. I think what Kevin's saying and what I said, to be clear, I do think it's possible to have these opinions and also still have moral clarity and certainty and speak truth to power. I think there's a way to move this way with this understanding without compromising any morals. And kind of tying to our first conversation about disagreements, I think there is an inventory. Like, you know, if this is a movement for racial justice and you're talking to someone that maybe they're not part of the fucking KKK, but maybe, you know, they don't understand the history of racism. They think it's KKK. Ended.
Well, I got KKK right now. I love KKK. What's good? I'm joking.
Oh god, we're gonna get clipped.
What I will say that just
to put a period on it. I just tied earlier. If it is something like that, or if like a movement for sexuality equality, and it's triggering to you because you're in the community, that's absolutely fair. I'm not saying that you have to fucking like exposure therapy yourself to like virulent homophobia so that you can fight for like that. That's not what I'm saying. Like you can, but there is a medium or not a medium. I don't even like to put these in comparison, but there is a way to not do that, but also not look for moral purity in the people that you ally with.
Yeah. Exactly.
Period.
Well, sorry, you guys got me worked up.
Thank you for listening to the Bottomless Podcast, to our nice, short and sweet 60-minute episode. We're glad that you joined us this evening. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Spotify at BTTMLESS Podcast. Love you guys. Peace.
Bottomless.